Did you know that Africa is home to over 60% of the world's mineral reserves, including vast amounts of gold, diamonds, and rare earth elements? This abundance has fueled conflicts that date back centuries. Today, we're going to explore the untold story of Africa's resource wars and the devastating impact they've had on local populations and global dynamics. These conflicts have been shrouded in mystery, but it's crucial we understand their roots and implications. Resource wars have ravaged African countries for decades, leaving a trail of bloodshed, displacement, and environmental degradation in their wake. But what's often overlooked is the role of external actors who've exploited these resources for their own gain. It's time to peel back the layers and expose the real culprits behind these conflicts. The world's attention is often drawn to Africa's poverty and instability, but rarely do we examine the root cause, the scramble for resources. It's a narrative that's been conveniently distorted, but we're about to set the record straight. Africa's natural resources have been a curse in disguise, fueling corruption, violence, and instability. The world's major powers have been complicit in this exploitation, propping up puppet governments and fueling conflict to get their hands on these valuable resources. Historically, Africa's resources have been a prized possession for foreign powers. The scramble for Africa in the late 19th century saw European powers carve up the continent, claiming territories and resources for themselves. This set the stage for the exploitation that would follow. From oil in Nigeria to diamonds in Sierra Leone, Africa's natural wealth has been systematically plundered. The consequences have been devastating, with local populations forced to live in poverty while foreign corporations reap the benefits. It's a story that's been hidden from view, but today we're going to expose the truth. Oil, diamonds, and minerals have been the engines driving these resource wars. But it's not just a story of greed, it's also about the corruption and violence that's come hand in hand with the exploitation of these resources. The Democratic Republic of Congo has been ravaged by conflict over its mineral riches, with foreign powers and local warlords vying for control. The human cost has been staggering, with millions displaced and killed. But it's not just the DRC resource wars have ravaged countries from Sierra Leone to Angola, with devastating consequences. Sierra Leone's Diamond War is a prime example of how external actors can spark conflict. In the 1990s, the country was torn apart as rival factions vied for control of the diamond trade. The war left tens of thousands dead and millions displaced, all for the sake of a valuable resource. Foreign powers have been more than happy to prop up corrupt governments and warlords, as long as they get access to these resources. It's a dirty game, where human lives are mere pawns in the scramble for wealth. The role of foreign corporations cannot be overstated. They've worked hand in hand with corrupt governments and warlords to plunder Africa's resources. It's a story of greed and exploitation, where profits are prioritized over people's lives. In the Congo, multinational corporations have been accused of funding rebel groups and buying conflict minerals. It's a far cry from the shiny image they project to the world, but the reality is far more sinister. African nations have struggled to assert control over their own resources, often due to the weak governance and corruption that's plagued the continent. It's a toxic mix that's allowed foreign powers to step in and exploit these resources. Foreign intervention has often been justified under the guise of humanitarian assistance or nation building, but the real motive is always about securing access to these valuable resources. It's a ruse that's been used time and again, and it's time we expose the truth. The impact on local communities has been devastating. From environmental degradation to displacement and violence, the human cost has been staggering. It's a story that's often overlooked, but today we're putting the spotlight on the victims of these resource wars. But there are glimmers of hope. Peace agreements, international regulations, and grassroots movements are all working to address these conflicts and bring accountability to those responsible. The Kimberley process, for example, has helped reduce the flow of conflict diamonds onto the global market. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a step in the right direction. In the Congo, grassroots movements are fighting back against external exploitation, demanding greater control over their own resources. It's a long and difficult road, but there's a growing sense of resistance against foreign interference. International regulations are also being tightened, making it harder for foreign corporations to operate with impunity. It's a slow process, but there's growing momentum behind efforts to bring accountability to those responsible for these resource wars. As we conclude this story, it's essential to remember that Africa's resource wars are a symptom of a deeper problem: the unsustainable management of resources. It's a global issue and one that requires a collective response. Africa's abundance of natural resources should be a blessing, not a curse. It's time for sustainable management, not exploitation. The future of Africa depends on it. If you want to learn more about the history of colonialism in Africa and the impact of foreign corporations, be sure to check out our related videos. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going.